There are two questions that directly connect one with the other. One is whether if you eat on Yom Kippur because a person is sick, one, do they make Kiddush before they eat? And two, when they say Birkat HaMazon or Al Michya, do they add in a prayer for Yom Kippur? These questions are connected to each other. The question really is if I have to eat on Yom Kippur, do I do the other things I normally would do at a time that I would eat?
Oh, right. For people with...
Halacha Krishna. The first time we find this question even addressed is in a book called Shibbolei HaLeket. Shibbolei HaLeket, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the Gaonei Ashkenaz. And he says that because Yom Kippur was not a day in which the rabbis demanded that we eat something, and there's no mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur, to the contrary, not eat on Yom Kippur. So they also would not have created an obligation to say Kiddush or add in something, if we would eat, into the prayers of Birkat HaMazon, aside from the regular. Maran agrees regarding Kiddush, that we don't say Kiddush, but regarding saying the prayer Birkat HaMazon, you would make an addition on this day of Yom Kippur.
Because it's just like any other time you have to say things.
And that seems to be the opinion of the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says we don't make Kiddush, but we would add in something into the Birkat HaMazon that we would make afterwards, or the Al Michya would say afterwards.
After the Elah.
Like you would say would you say the Shabbat Birkat HaMazon?
Oh, that's a great question.
I was just gonna ask
That's a fantastic question.
Ya'aleh v'yavo.
Reg is like the Shabbat of Shabbats.
Right.
I mean, this is saying
Well, 'cause
if
the
you
Yom
ate.
Kippur falls on Shabbat.
If one needs to eat, for example,
Oh,
they are
yeah.
sick or whatever. And the Rambam says that just like you make Kiddush and Havdalah on a Shabbat, you also make Kiddush and Havdalah on a holiday. And therefore it would make sense that Yom Kippur you make Havdalah on Yom Kippur. So too you would also make Kiddush on Yom Kippur if you were to be eating. The problem is that the Kiddush that we make on holidays is not the same as Kiddush we make on Shabbat. It is rabbinic in its nature. There is no biblical obligation to make Kiddush on a holiday. And therefore already there, the rabbis probably would not have instituted a Kiddush for a day that you didn't eat. The only reason they do that on Shabbat is because of a day where you have a holiday. You have an obligation to eat, and therefore they added in also a Kiddush and something to add into Birkat HaMazon. Now, the Poskim bring down, there's another day in which we're not obligated to eat, but we're not obligated to say Kiddush either, though we are obligated to add in something. If we eat, we're obligated to add into our tefillah. Which day is that?
Rosh Chodesh?
Rosh Chodesh, very good. I don't have to eat on Rosh Chodesh. There's no special su'udah you have. No, the Poskim suggest you should have a special meal, but it's not an obligation like on Shabbat. You have to have 3 meals. And therefore, if one is to eat on Rosh Chodesh, one has to add into the after blessings. From here you should learn that you should, like Maran said, you should add in something to your after blessing on Yom Kippurim, just like Rosh Chodesh that doesn't have an obligation to eat. But this matter is not agreed upon by all of the Poskim. The Shibbolei HaLeket writes, I'll read to Shibbolei HaLeket. שאלתי מלפני מורינו הרב אביגדור כהן צדק זצ"ל. I asked from my rabbi, Rabbi Avigdor Cohen Tzedek. חולה שאכל ביום הכיפורים. אם צריך להזכיר מן המעורב בברכת המזון או לא. A sick person who ate on Yom Kippur, does he have to add in anything to his after blessing? והשיב לי בכתב גלילי ידיו, and he wrote back to me in his own handwriting. נראה, it appears דכיוון דלאו מצווה כלל באכילה זו מחמת היום, that because there is no mitzvah to eat on this day, כי אדרבה, to the contrary, היום גורם לו איסור אכילה, לא לכל ישראל. There's a prohibition on him and all the Jews in the world to eat on Yom Kippur. אלא מפני שפיקוח נפש עומד עליו ודוחה לו, but because his life is more important than keeping the mitzvah, that saving his life allows us to push off the prohibition of eating. ishtarele, we allow him to eat. But umashvele kechol legabe nin achila. But it's considered as a person who's eating sand. He's not allowed to be eating on this day. We allow him to eat something in order to live. Mistaber de lo tikun le rabanan haskara. It doesn't make sense to me that our rabbis would have instituted on a day which you cannot eat a prayer after the meal that you eat on Yom Kippur. De lo dami le Rosh Chodesh. It's not the same as Rosh Chodesh. Why? The hatam asur b'tanit. In Rosh Chodesh, it's forbidden to fast. You're not allowed to fast on Rosh Chodesh. V'yesh ba'achila darara de mitzvah. And so even when you eat on Rosh Chodesh, there's some kind of mitzvah in that eating. Because you will not be allowed to fast. Even though you don't have to have a meal, but fasting you're not allowed to have. So the eating that you do is somewhat of a mitzvah. דאף אגב, זה לא מחייב לאכול פת, להיות זקוק לברכת המזון, תענית מי הוא לא ישתרה. It's just that you're not obligated to eat bread, but you're obligated to eat something on ראש חודש. אבל כאן, שהאכילה אינה באה כלל מחמת היום, איך תיסוק הדעתנו ממר דתיקון רבנן אזכרה. But because there is no mitzvah from that day to eat on Yom Kippur, so how could you possibly fathom the rabbis would have instituted a blessing that you make after the meal that you eat? Now there's another idea. Some poskim were afraid that if we would institute a blessing, a kiddush, an after blessing for eating on Yom Kippur, it would one day lead people to think that it's okay to eat and drink on Yom Kippur. And rather, it's only the leather shoes and the washing that's forbidden. But if there's kiddush for Yom Kippur, what does that tell me? That I have to make kiddush on Yom Kippur? How do I do that? I have to drink wine. They were afraid of the possible kilkulim that would come out of this, the possible problems that would come out, and they decided, there's no kiddush, there's nothing.
Makes sense.
So here's the question. What about kiddush on a Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbat?
Right.
Like this year. You might tell me that Yom Kippur doesn't have a kiddush with it. Shabbat does. So maybe once I'm already eating on Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbat, it's not that I'm making kiddush because of Yom Kippur, rather I'm making kiddush because of Shabbat. In this situation, the Mishnah Berurah only gives us a hint. He writes in his notes, Ayin, go look in the writings of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. You should know, I consider the Mishnah Berurah, and so does the Beit Midrash that I come from, our parents, the Mishnah Berurah is a very authoritative Ashkenazi Achron. He's not like any of the other guys on the block. His word carries a lot of weight, and that's not necessarily the case in the Ashkenazi Yeshiva world. Mishnah Berurah is looked at as like, oh, his book is a little simple, it's a nice commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. We see him as a lot more than just a nice commentary on Shulchan Aruch, but one who had a very clear vision on how to decide halachot. Oftentimes we'll say he decided halacha based on the Rama, which we don't follow. But if we were to follow the Rama, so if somebody who follows the Rama would ask us the question, we would always tell them, follow the Mishnah Berurah. There are often times in our Beit Midrash that some Sephardic opinions would interpret the Shulchan Aruch one way, but the Mishnah Berurah interprets it the other way, and our parents will go like the Mishnah Berurah. Somebody once told him, so you became Ashkenazi? He said, call me whatever names you want. I'm not embarrassed to follow the Mishnah Berurah. Call me whatever name you need. Look what the Rabbi Akiva Eiger writes. וגם אינו צריך לקדש, אפשר בזה רק ביום הכיפורים דעלמא. That which the Mishnah Berurah says, Rabbi Akiva Eiger is not talking about the Mishnah Berurah, Shimon Leggett. That which it says that you don't make kiddush on Yom Kippur, that is talking about a weekday, Yom Kippur. כיוון דקידוש יום טוב דרבנן, לא תקראו לך קידוש ביום הכיפורים. Because kiddush on the holiday is rabbinic, we know the rabbis did not institute a kiddush for the holidays, for Yom Kippur. אבל ביום הכיפורים שחל בשבת, but Yom Kippur that falls out on Shabbat, חיוב עליו מדאורייתא לקדש. He has a biblical obligation to make kiddush, not a rabbinic obligation. והסוברים דין קידוש אלא במקום סעודה ודרבנן, יש לומר דיצא ידי חובה דאורייתא בעזרת שבת תפילת אם כיוון לצד, ולגבי דרבנן הווי כמו יום הכיפורים. דעלמא. Okay, this is already a complicated discussion.
There's all kinds of priorities to think of here.
Yeah.
One of which is that Yom Kippur supersedes Shabbat.
But then they just said that if
Does it change the Havdalah afterwards?
Wouldn't change have that.
You just don't do
Rabbi
the
Akiva Eiger seems to come to the conclusion that he would make kiddush for Shabbat because that's biblical and you cannot push that off if you're already eating. Mashen ken.
If you're already eating, do you have to also eat Sudat Shishi?
Very good. How far do you go with
Let's
it?
go all the way.
Yeah.
You know, there's an old Jewish minhag to eat chamin. Already we have to make chulin.
Yeah. Torturous.
Chalo, 2 chalo, not just 1 chalo. What do you mean? Wait, okay, so already I'm going to stop us here. But it seems that even though Rabbi Akiva Eiger would hold that Yom Kippur that falls on Shabbat, you make Kiddush, the rest of the Chaonim didn't really accept his logic. And even though Mishnah Berurah does, I don't know that we would tell a person to make Kiddush on Yom Kippur, even if it falls on Shabbat.
But that's only if they're eating because it's for survival, like it's for to stay alive, for life-threatening thing.
Correct. There's more people
So
than
food
not that
becomes
eat like that.
food is medicine
Yeah.
then, rather than
I
a
realize
meal.
this.
Food is basically
Everybody
more as
all
a
of a sudden
medicine to maintain your health rather than
has to eat.
eating.
Yeah, the food is very good. So that would
Yeah.
probably answer the Surashi question. You're not eating meals here. You're eating in order to allow yourself to not be sick, or God forbid, hurt yourself during the. It's not that you're eating a Shabbat meal.
You know, you're
It's quite to the contrary. Okay, does that answer my Kiddush question?
Kind of.
I think so.
So you'd make Kiddush if you have to eat during Yom Kippur that falls on the Shabbat.
According to Rabbi Akiva Eiger.
Right.
According to everybody else, you wouldn't just like a regular Yom Kippur.
And then Birkat.
But it seemed, even though like everybody else is against it, what he says is pretty true. Like, because it's a biblical commandment to do Kiddush on Shabbat.
I'll give you a good answer to that. The biblical commandment to do Kiddush on Shabbat is,
I was actually gonna ask you.
what is the biblical commandment? Zacho et Yom HaShabbat l'kadasho. Remember that today is Shabbat to sanctify it.
And sanctify it. So that's what sanctify.
So when you say Shabbat Shalom, that's your Kiddush.
Well,
That Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach used to make it a custom of his that he would walk around the streets on Friday night, because Kiddush on Friday night is biblical. Shabbat morning is not biblical, it's rabbinic. He would go around and wish all the soldiers that he could find, the people he knew weren't able to make Kiddush that night, he would wish them Shabbat Shalom and wait for them to respond Shabbat Shalom. That way, at least they would be doing Kiddush on a biblical level.
Wow.
Right, the Gemara says, our rabbis instituted an extra level of Kiddush, Zochrehu b'dvarim hanemarim al hayayin. Remember Shabbat, sanctify it by saying those words while holding a glass of wine. Meaning, give it more importance. When you say something in a glass of wine, you're making a toast, it adds importance to that. So the wine is only a rabbinic addition. That's why if you look in the Moroccan Kiddush, before we say Kiddush, we say Shabbat Mekudash. Shabbat is sanctified. In order to fulfill the biblical obligation of sanctifying Shabbat with words, and then the rabbinic obligation of doing that while holding a glass of wine. That being said, it could be that according to the poskim, if a person prays the Yom Kippur prayers, and he says, on this Yom Kippur, on this Shabbat day, that he has already done Kiddush on a biblical level. And therefore, really, he doesn't need to make another Kiddush.
Oh.
Because his prayers already counted for the Kiddush that he needs to make, at least on a biblical level.
But does it? The only problem that I have with that is like like, are people aware? Like, are they do they have kavana when they're doing it? You
Correct.
know?
But I'll make a bigger problem. Kiddush is supposed to be done in the place where
Where you eat.
Where you eat. The question is that obligation rabbinic or is that obligation biblical? If that obligation is rabbinic, so it's okay to, in the prayer, have in mind that the Shabbat that you mentioned is for Kiddush. But if that obligation is biblical, that you must do Kiddush at the same place where you eat,
That's how we do it on Shabbat and Yom Kippur.
then in that situation you would have to repeat Kiddush again wherever it is that you are eating. And if you eat in the Beit Knesset, you will lose a lot of friends on Yom Kippur. So don't do it.
Oh, I see.
People get jealous of you. They also want animal crackers. Whatever it is that people have.
Don't bring any sandwiches.
Bring a big old sandwich.
Bagels and love.
That being said, let me quickly walk you through in a few minutes the halachot of what you can and cannot do. By the way, there's a big argument between the Sephardic rabbis and Ashkenazi rabbis about whether or not you're allowed to bury your chamin What?
Yeah. What?
How do you used to cook your chamin for Shabbat?
Yeah.
Oh,
and,
like a ground
Grandpa
fire.
told me about that.
Tell me.
I mean, he said that like in Morocco they would just like stick it on stones and stuff and
Oh,
heat it up.
Dutch oven.
So imagine you dig a little pit, you light in there some coals, and you put your pot in there till tomorrow morning when you need to eat it. Now you're allowed to do that on Erev Shabbat because the chamin is cooking for the sake of Shabbat. But what if you put away your pot for the meal that you want to have on the night of Yom Kippur? You don't have time. You have to remember, no refrigerators. You, Motzei Yom Kippur, you need to eat something. You don't have time to start slaughtering chickens, slicing them to pieces, salting them, grilling them. By the time you eat, you're going to be dead. So the invention was, let's make chamin. Some kind of hot dish that we eat, Motzei Yom Kippur.
That cooks for 25 hours.
Yes. The Sephardic rabbis say it's okay. Because you're allowed to prepare on a weekday for a weekday. So you're essentially preparing on Friday for Saturday night, which is the weekday. The Ashkenazi rabbis prohibit this.
Of course.
Because you're not allowed to cook on Shabbat for the sake of a weekday.
It's not
Therefore,
cooked
even though you're
all.
preparing for the weekday, you're allowing something to cook
Through Shabbat.
through Shabbat for a weekday. Though the Ashkenazi rabbis agree that if you really went ahead and did it, you could rely on the Sephardic rabbis.
This is like with the hot water.
to
It's
you.
like they won't even use the hot water thing that was heated on Shabbat for the weekday, like for Saturday night.
I never even heard. Yeah, that could be. Well, that's a
So you have to
practical
have new
ramification
water.
of
It's
that.
I'm listening. I've seen that done in Chabad, for example.
I'm not familiar, but I believe it.
See,
When it comes to eating
If
and
you put
drinking,
hot water Friday for Friday evening for Shabbat,
they won't.
you shouldn't use the same hot water when Shabbat ends.
you are not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. I should just go back and drop so I can see Jack's pretty face.
Yeah, I'm here.
You're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur from the Torah. According to the Torah, though, there has to be a minimum amount which you eat, which is not violating the laws of the Torah. There's a shiur. That shiur was a kotevet, a date, a thick date, which is a little bit less than an egg. Let's say 2/3 of an egg.
The medjool, like a big
Eating,
thing.
yeah, you're right now you're gonna stick. What kind of date? So let's say
Daglet or
2/3 of an egg. That's the amount of food you're allowed to eat, in which you are rabbinically violating Yom Kippur, but not biblically violating Yom Kippur. Meaning the Torah says that any soul which doesn't afflict itself on this day will be, God forbid, excommunicated from the Jewish people. The measurement is someone who eats more than 2/3 of an egg.
So you're not biblically violating Yom Kippur if you eat half an egg?
Correct, but don't start making out
No, I'm
Kehillat
not.
HaShamayim
I just
food
want to
packages
clear it
for.
in my mind what you're saying.
Yes. Now the rabbis prohibit this, but the practical ramification is, what happens if a person needs to eat on Yom Kippur? We preferably give them to eat less than 2/3 of an egg size of food at a time. The reason? At least they won't be biblically violating Yom Kippur, only rabbinically violating Yom Kippur. If a person, though, the doctor, whoever there says that's not enough food for him, he needs real food, then to save his life, he eats whatever he needs. But you'll notice that people pre-measure food for Yom Kippur.
If you're sick, you mean.
Yes.
If you're gonna break the fast early.
There's really an argument among the rabbis. Does the pit of the date count or not?
You shouldn't. Can't eat it.
Right.
I'll leave that argument for everyone's.
Like the pit of the date like counts as the size, like the amount. You kind of take it out and then squish it back.
Right.
They don't discuss the fluid
I'm
amount.
saying no.
No. So in terms of water, that amount is melolugmav, the amount that would fill your cheek.
It's pretty decent amount of water.
At one time. Now you're allowed to have this much.
How cheeky.
You're allowed to have this much
Big cheese.
every kedei achilat press. It's a certain halachic measurement of time, which comes out how long it would take you to eat 3 eggs. What kind of eggs? Regular eggs, not ostrich eggs, not dinosaur eggs,
Like hard-boiled eggs.
not quail eggs. Regular eggs. Yeah, okay, hard-boiled eggs.
That's a halakha.
That takes a
time
little
for
while.
what?
3?
It takes a
Like,
while.
that's how often you can eat that amount of food.
No.
This is how much. By the way, all of these
Drink
things
water.
a person violates the biblical prohibition of not eating and drinking, they simply are not obligated in karet. They don't get spiritual excommunication. It's not like you can go have a feast now. We're simply trying to do damage control. If he's going to eat, at least let's try to make an amount that is fitting according to the Torah.
It sounds like the amounts that they're letting you eat is not going to satisfy you. It's not going to like make you feel like, oh, good.
Why?
Now
You can eat this
I'm
much,
full.
every few minutes.
I thought that last one was just for water.
Also for food.
Oh, also for food.
Now, eating and drinking at the same time, they don't add up. So your 2/3 of an egg and your
Cheek full.
cheek
water.
full don't add up to be more than the size of an egg. Liquids are liquids.
okay.
Meat food is food. The question is, what if you eat something that soaked up liquids, like French toast that soaked up oil?
I'm not allowed.
You can't make it anyway.
Well, there's a problem. It seems like they would count, and they would.
I feel like if you're eating French toast to stay alive, you should probably talk to your doctor.
Now,
about some
if you
other
eat
issues.
things that are not fit for consumption, for example, if you ate something very bitter, if you eat peppers, or he says dried ginger, not like the kind you buy with the sugar crystals on top, something that's very very sharp. It's not the kind of thing you're eating a plate full of. Foods that are only fitting for animals, like bamboo stalks, not the hearts of palm or something. Or you eat grass.
Bamboo shoots.
Or you eat the leaves of a tree. Now don't get smart over here. Lettuce, celery,
It's not true.
those are all leaves, but those are actual food. So don't get smart. Those would count for the
Leaves.
prohibition of karet. And if you drink something which is not fit for being not fit to drink, for example, says Shulchan Aruch,
Oh, like boiled.
Bitter.
like the
That's
juices
like
that
drugs.
come out of a fish,
Ugh.
or the oil that comes out of the fish,
Fish juice.
or vinegar that is so rancid that it bubbles when you throw it on the ground. It's very sour.
Kombucha.
Seeing a whole different
Uh,
side of it.
These
exactly
don't
what it's
have
like.
biblical prohibitions attached to them, only rabbinic prohibitions attached to them.
Just drink some.
But if you eat nice peppers or fresh ginger or raw meat even, or just vinegar that is mixed in with water, all your vinegar that you have today is mixed in with water. You're not getting pure vinegar. It's diluted in something. Those are biblically prohibited and a person would get karet for them. You're not even allowed to taste things and spit them out. So if you want to chew even on bisamim, you can't. Nothing goes in.
What's good? Is that like last year?
Spiritual excommunication.
Oh.
It's a big one.
That's why we hold that you don't brush your teeth on Tisha B'Av. On Yom Kippur. Other fasts, yes, but Yom Kippur, no. We don't put anything in our mouth, even if you're not going to swallow. It doesn't make a difference. We don't brush our teeth.
Just brush your teeth.
You're
before
allowed
Yom
to
Kippur.
swallow your spit, Chava.
You're not
Don't
eating
start
anyway.
being strict over here of how much spit is in my mouth.
You're not supposed to
Is
eat
it
it.
cheekful?
Anyway.
Is it ounces? How many? Chava, what's in your mouth is in your mouth. You are allowed to
Spit
smell
on the
good
cream.
smells. There are many poskim that actually suggest that you smell bisamim throughout the holiday
Yeah, I'm pretty
in
sure.
order to add those 100 blessings that you need to make every single day. Pellets,
Mint.
mint,
My mom
rosemary.
always gives us mint before.
Pellets brings down that
Aromatherapy
it's okay for
oils.
someone to sniff tobacco, but it's inappropriate. Snuff. It's
No
inappropriate.
way.
It's inappropriate to do that in a bit knesset.
Well,
So
we used to be
Really?
before they
They
used to
always
have
used to
snuff
be like
around.
that.
the old Ashkenazi
The
guys
shul.
come around with little silver
Oh.
things with
Snuff
snuff
box.
in it.
Remember those days?
My old
Everybody would
the
sneeze.
shul in,
Yeah, I didn't
in,
see too much.
Hasidim
Jackson
have
once
a
or
certain
twice
custom
before
like
he
that.
passed
That,
to be
it
younger.
burns, but it smells really good.
It makes you kind of.
Yeah.
Two different kinds of drinks add up. Two different kinds of foods add up. Those are all. You don't want to pass that 2/3 mark. The interesting question. It says on Pesach that you're not allowed to touch chametz on Pesach. Why? Because maybe you'll eat it, even if it doesn't belong to you. Maybe you'll eat it. Is food allowed to be touched on Yom Kippur? It's also a biblical prohibition.
Well, people prep it before like the break fast, right?
It's a good question. I'm even asking here to feed your child.
Yeah, that's what.
Can you touch that food?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to feed your. Oh wait.
How do you feed it?
Yeah, you're not allowed to feed your child.
You sure
Somebody
not?
else has
How
to.
do you?
So
how
the
does
poskim
kid
bring
eat?
down.
How does a kid eat if you're not allowed to touch the
Well,
food?
they have to be like.
The Rama says not a problem to touch it.
Okay.
The reason? On Pesach you're eating things, and so it's a normal thing. You might come to eat also the chametz you're holding.
Right.
But on Yom Kippur, you don't eat anything. Meaning you're very particular not to put anything in your mouth. Not water, not food, nothing. And so here there's not a problem. But the Ben Ish Chai does bring down that if you have no need to touch food on Yom Kippur, it's proper to be strict and not touch. I mean, if you're not feeding kids, you're not the one setting up for the break of the fast. It would be best for you to avoid holding foods or drinks.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how do the kids have to be for you not to give them food? Is it 9 or 8?
9 is only for a little bit of time. They only fast a little longer than they would usually
Yeah,
eat.
but you're not allowed to give them food though.
Until the time they're allowed to eat. Once they're allowed to eat, you can give them whatever they need.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
What was the time? I don't think
We said a
remember
few
that.
hours. So depending on who they are and how much they eat, and normally what time they normally start to eat.
Gotcha.
You're not allowed to wash yourself, not with hot water, not with cold water. Even to stick your whole finger in the water, you're not supposed to do if there's no need for it.
But until you die in the morning.
So all the washing that is prohibited is that which is there for pleasure, to make you feel good. And therefore, if you have any kind of sweat on your hands, or your hands get dirty, let's say you change the baby's diaper, and whatever happens, you are allowed to wash your hands, because you're not there. You can even wash your whole body if it gets dirty on Yom Kippur. As long as the reason you're doing it is not because I need to take a shower, but because you really got dirty, you fell in the mud, something happened to you, you can go take a shower. Though somebody who's not so particular, there's some people who fall in the mud all the time during the week and they don't take a shower for 2 days. Those people don't need to be showering on Yom Kippur.
You mean they make an exception to clean themselves on Yom Kippur, but during
Correct.
the week they don't.
Somebody who is very particular, he's allowed to wash even his face with water. The Rama writes there's an Ashkenazi custom not to even wash your eyes in the morning when you wake up.
That's,
What Mishnah Berurah suggests is, let's say you wash your hands in the morning, you can use that water that's on your hands to wipe your face. I'll tell you personally, it's because of the years I spent with Ashkenazim. My minhag is not to wash my face in Yom Kippur morning, but I do use the water from my hands to wash away my face. It works, but if someone is more particular than that, this is not a need to be strict about it. That's literally there to clean your face. A bride is allowed to wash her face in the first 30 days after she gets married. So she shouldn't look unfitting or unkempt for her husband, and maybe he'll become resentful or unattracted towards her. I'm assuming that could go both ways. The Chayei Adam says nowadays the men and women don't even see each other on Yom Kippur, so I don't understand why people would be lenient about this. What you're telling here, these laws come along with common sense that goes along with it also, not just don't do this, don't do that. When you wash your hands in the morning, you wash up until the end of your knuckles, and you have in mind that you're washing only to clean your hands, not because you enjoy washing your hands. There's an interesting thing that you'll see that people make a mistake. When the Kohanim go up to wash their hands, people are very careful. Oh, you can't wash past your knuckles. It's Amei Haaretz, the ignoramuses came up with this. The Kohen, even on Yom Kippur, he would wash his whole hands. He would even go to the mikveh. The whole purpose there was ritual cleanliness, not and just like he did it in the Beit HaMikdash, it's okay to wash his hands entirely on Yom Kippur also. These people who are like, oh, you spilled too much water. I see every year the Levim, they fight about these things. Maybe not here. I don't know what the Levim were fighting about. You got in a fight last year about how much water? The Levim fought about how much water they poured in the Kohanim's hands?
No.
Good, okay. Here we don't fight about a lot of things.
There was
We
no
learned about
Kohen
it first.
revolt.
It is a Kohen revolt?
There wasn't.
Oh.
Not in this synagogue. What about, do you want me to bring the bitters?
Yes, we actually make water here, or have the ability to make water here that is bitter. In the event that someone needs a drink, because it has these drops that the Rambam says if you boil pomegranate peels in water, you can drink that water in Yom Kippur because it's too bitter to be considered prohibited. And so we have such drops that we can add to the water that make the water not taste good. But if a person needs to be hydrated, nothing will happen to them. It's simply the water doesn't taste good. Correct? Will they
Yes.
get sick from
Yeah.
drinking
Oh,
this
no,
water?
no.
Yeah, okay. We don't rub ourselves with any oils, any perfumes, any ointments. That's not we don't. That's one of the 5 things that's prohibited to do on Yom Kippurim. We don't wear leather shoes. Other shoes are okay to wear. Again, like I mentioned, he is of the opinion that if the shoes are like overly comfortable, it's okay for you to be strict and not wear them on Yom Kippur. Though we can't force somebody to follow. That's not a halakha. Halakha mentions only leather shoes. But the spirit of the law is that the shoes shouldn't be so comfortable that you're enjoying yourself in Yom Kippur. They don't have to have spikes in them. You don't have to hurt yourself. Just
Oh boy. It's like boot camp. You mean your feet are supposed to hurt?
I see how
there's
no, not supposed to
comfort
hurt. Not supposed to hurt. They're not
What
supposed
does that
to
mean,
be.
comfort?
People wore leather shoes the way you put on your slippers at home when you come home and want to be comfy in your
Yeah.
robe. It wasn't something that you wore. People wore like wooden straps with straps on them. So why would you, for Dafka Yom Kippur, you're wearing the fanciest shoes you have? That was the idea behind this halakha.
With like just a pair of sandals would be fine. Like if that's what people had.
You mean like
Fair
flip flops?
Yeah.
Flip flops are rubber. They're not-
What about there are some Ashkenazim that were careful not to wear rubber shoes on Yom Kippur. There's such
Not
a
to
minhag
wear?
record. Not to wear.
Why?
What if you use fish leather or chicken leather? That's really weird.
I didn't know it was a thing.
What? Fish leather.
Yeah, chicken leather.
My grandpa
You
was
can
leather.
have fish
Leather,
juice.
leather.
Leather.
My grandpa
What's
wore
fish-
ostrich
what's-
shark skin.
You mean the
And
skin
alligator
on the
boots.
fish?
If you could drink
They
fish
call
juice.
that-
That's
That's
also it's also prohibited.
They call that leather?
Sure, Halakha calls it leather.
Some fish have tough skins or something.
My grandpa used to wear ostrich boots.
Cowfish has leather.
You're allowed to put on shoes if you're going to Yom Kippur, if you're going to walk in dangerous place. Someone walking through the canyon, the only shoes they have that cover their feet are leather shoes. Chances of that being a reality are very rare. Most people have tennis shoes or running shoes. But in a case where you were in the olden days, had to walk through the canyon, you're afraid of rattlesnakes, you would be allowed to cover your feet. Just like a woman who gives birth for the first 30 days after she gives birth, and a sick person who, they can all wear regular shoes. Last but not least, there's a minhag to separate a husband and wife on Yom Kippurim. It's a good minhag even not to talk too much in a fashion that can arouse any kind of interest, for the reason of we don't want them to, God forbid, be with each other, which would be a biblical prohibition on that night. And also, we're trying to avoid Chaz v'Shalom that a man should have any kind of emission from his body on Yom Kippurim, because the poskim talk very much about that night. Dafka has a lot of symbolism for the whole year, and so it would be wise for husband and wife to also treat Yom Kippurim like any other time where they are forbidden to each other. And those are the halachot that I have to share with you today. Any questions? Anything you wanted to know?
Me and Raphael were actually talking about this. So like we did a lot of preparation for like Rosh Hashanah. What is our preparation? Like I guess in a nutshell, if you can, I don't know.
Tshuva.
For that's it. Isn't that
That's
what
it.
I know, but
Spend your whole life doing tshuva.
I just feel like that's what the focus for Rosh Hashanah was.
Yeah, how do you capture like the different
But we didn't do
intention?
tshuva on Rosh Hashanah.
But we
Well, not
talked.
like a
We had
pod-
the song of the sister and like how she.
We didn't do Hashem, but we didn't do any of that on Rosh Hashanah.
No.
Rosh Hashanah was just warming up for Yom Kippur. Kabbalah with money, no chicken.
So kind of like this is Rosh Hashanah in a simple term or way of putting it. Rosh Hashanah is like going to court, and then now we're coming back to court to like hear our
For
sentence.
ourselves. No, Rosh Hashanah was not about us. Rosh Hashanah was about the non-Jews. Yom Kippurim was about us.
Okay. Oh.
We're coming now to talk about ourselves. No more kingdoms of the world, no more countries, no more just Am Yisrael. Alright, have a good night.